Welcome to Storytime with the Intimacy Ally. Each episode will tear down a myth, kick a social norm in the beanbag, gut punch a sex ed untruth, or destroy a poorly constructed relationship expectation. Get ready to unlearn all the crap you accepted as fact. Strap in for a mind-blowing revision on what sex is and what it can do. Prepare yourself for a whole new thought pattern when it comes to modern relationships. And now, here's your host, Jenny Simas, the Intimacy Ally, relationship expert and certified sex and intimacy coach.
Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to Storytime with the Intimacy Ally. It's me, Jenny Simas Lady, your Intimacy Ally. And I am joined today by this bodacious babe, this wondrous woman, Amy Weissfeld. She is a certified somatic sex educator, a sexological body worker, an orgasm coach. She provides a compassionate body-based approach to sexual health and to wellness. She is also a School of Consent teacher, a Betty Dodson Bodysex facilitator, a mother, an advocate, a fierce friend. And just so you know, her pronouns are she and her. So, Amy, I am so glad to welcome you to the podcast. So honored that you could give us some of your time. And I would just love to jump in and ask you, how did you start in this work?
Aw, thank you, Jenny. I'm so happy to be here. Hi to all of your fabulous
Yay.
listeners, and thanks for having me. Oh, how did
Mm-hmm.
I get into this work? Really on my own healing journey. I'll tell you what happened. I Several things happened at once in very short order. My mother died unexpectedly, and we were close. And I was left thinking,
Mm-hmm.
how much time do we have on this planet? Am I living the best life? Am I living the life I want to live? And the answer was not a resounding hell yes. So that's the
Okay.
first thing that happened. The second thing that happened is my kids were getting older. I didn't need to be arranging play dates. I didn't need to be, rushing home from work to, deal with all of their stuff. My kids were they were getting into later years of middle school, early years of high school, and they just didn't need me holding their hands quite as much. And
Okay.
then I went on a ski trip where, I live in the Pacific Northwest, and sometimes we get rain instead of snow.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular ski trip turned into like a college drinking trip because the snow was so bad. And somebody made a pass at me, like an undeniable pass, where I was like, what the hell? Like, I'm just this middle-aged mom. I don't feel beautiful. I don't feel sexy. I don't feel vital and alive as a woman. And
Mm-hmm.
and I did for like a brief moment. And I was like, "Huh, that's kind of weird. Like what was that? What happened?"
Mm-hmm.
And so all three of those things at once just kind of set me on this path of my own healing journey of like what is going on in my life and what can I do to make things juicier, to make me feel,
Right.
like I was living the life I wanted to live, like I am vital, like I am alive, like I am living my best life. So that's what happened, and
Mm-hmm.
and basically what I did was I went to the internet like all of us do, and I just started Googling, and one of the things I was Googling was like, "Am I orgasming? How do I feel more sexual pleasure? Is there
Mm-hmm.
more?" And, I had a great partner. I was married for 30 really great years. My
Mm-hmm.
partner was on board with this. I couldn't fix myself in partnership. I needed to work on myself. So that's what sent me down this path. I ended up taking a Betty Dodson body sex workshop. I literally got on a plane from Portland, Oregon, and flew to New York City to meet with Betty Dodson in her apartment. The whole time I was like, what the hell am I
Wow.
doing? Who does this? You know?
I am so jealous of that, super duper jealous. My journey into this work did not start until I believe Betty had already passed.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when I get to see or hear people who actually got to train with her, I'm like, it's a little trickle down. It's a little
Yeah.
bit of Betty in the atmosphere.
Oh, totally.
Ugh,
She was just a fucking powerhouse of a woman,
right?
just an incredible sex positive sexual advocate for, for all of us. Like I sometimes say, "Oh, I'm a member of Betty's Betty's Army, like healing the world one orgasm at a time, like that's and
Fuck
I
yeah.
do, and now I teach a
Right.
workshop. So you should come take a body sex with me or with
I
some
need
other
to.
trained facilitator. But yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I absolutely need to. I only know 2 of you. It's hilarious.
Oh,
And all the,
yeah,
like, sexuality and intimacy people I know, there's
yeah,
only 2 that I've met. So it's like,
yeah.
"All right, I'm gonna have to check y'all out."
Well, there's not a ton of us in the world, but we are growing. And then also
Mhm.
the Betty Dodson work that I do as a body sex facilitator, that's for folks who identify as female. Sometimes they're for vulva owners, and sometimes they're for anybody who identifies as a woman. But as a sexological body worker and somatic sex educator, I work with all bodies, all people, all sizes,
Mhm.
all genders, all sexual
Mhm.
orientations, because I really want people to feel like, beautiful in their body. All bodies are beautiful. So I started
Right?
in body
Okay.
sex, Jenny, but then I
I was about
spread
to say, so
into
let's
the
get
other.
you let's figure
Yeah,
out what we're doing. So, you started out, you looked on the internet, you found Betty, you went to New York, and then
I literally came away from body sex wanting to shake every woman I saw on the street. Like literally, like, are you alive? Are you living the life you're, meant to live? Like, do you know what's possible? I was like on fire. I felt like I had really finally found my calling, like I wanted
Mhm.
to share this with everybody. And I
Mhm.
didn't have the training. I mean, Betty used to say, if you can throw a dinner party, that's such a classist thing to say, I recognize, but she did say, if you can throw a dinner party, you can lead a body sex. And I didn't feel like I didn't I could throw a dinner party, but I didn't feel like I could really work with all bodies. And that's what I wanted to do because I knew a lot of people who were working with couples. I knew a lot of people who were therapists. I knew a lot of people who were helping people intellectually, but I didn't know anybody
Mhm.
who could help somebody in the way that I felt like I really needed to help myself and the way that I wanted to work with other people.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
somatic sex educators, sexological body workers, we help people feel more pleasure in the body. So it's not just about what's happening
Mhm.
here. It's actually about kind of turning down the volume of what's going on up here
Mhm.
and turning up the volume of what's happening in the body from the neck down. So I got trained
Right.
in that. I got trained as a sexological body worker, and now I do that. I feel so blessed and fortunate that people let me into. Say, I'm sure you feel the same way, right? People let us into this
Oh, yeah.
important
Privileged.
place. Yeah,
Privileged completely to be able to have, like, this knowledge that does not get shared very widely with
yeah,
other people, and they trust me with it, and that's really, really cool. And then
yeah.
I just wanna be very respectful of that and its weight and go ahead and give them the best advice or, the best ideas that I can come up with on how to make it better,
Yeah.
more
I think
fun,
I
more
think
pleasurable. Yeah.
that's right. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be playful. All this fucking anxiety that people feel, all the sadness, all the angst.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of suffering out there. The work that we're
Mhm.
doing, that I this is how I think of it, is soul tending, right? It's soul tending.
Mhm.
We're helping people tend to their souls, themselves. And what I
Right?
think is so interesting is people like, they don't really give themselves permission to feel as
Mm-mm.
much. We all have a pleasure ceiling, right? It's just so many people, myself included, right? We've lowered that pleasure ceiling.
Mhm.
So how do we get people to raise
Mhm.
the pleasure ceiling, what we allow ourselves to feel? That's the that's
Yeah.
that's the gist. That's the fun.
So you started out doing, like, the body sex, or that was the initial thing, and then you went into, like, the somatic, sexological body work, right?
Yeah.
And so since it's Masturbation Month, I wanna talk to you about this part of your work that is working on that, and I also wanna talk to you about, like, your target audience, as it were, or who you've worked with the most.
Yeah.
So is that women? Is that men? Is that couples?
It's a
Who are
great
you
question.
engaging with, and what are you working on?
It's a great question. Thanks for letting me share this. I'll start with the latter part of your question, which is who have I worked with? It's interesting, because all of our journeys are personal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I started out because I came through body sex, and my own story is one of body shame. I wasn't in
Mm-hmm.
my body. I had fled my body because I felt disgusting. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely understand.
And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really it doesn't matter what we look like. Like there's really no connection to what we actually look like. It's just bullshit dysmorphia, in bullshit indoctrination. So anyway, I started out wanting to work with women.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found very quickly in my practice, I started in 2017. I started doing body sex in 2016 and then in sexological body work in 2017 when I was certified. But what I found very quickly is, contrary to popular belief, women do not ask for directions when it comes to their sexuality. Men do. And that's, again, because of indoctrination. Men are raised believing their sexuality is of primal importance to their masculinity, and
Mm-hmm.
women are not. And so when something goes
It's
wrong or
true.
something isn't right.
I mean, I think Betty hit the nail on the head talking about her experience that her mom allowing her to explore her own body was the kindest thing that her mom could have done.
Yeah.
Um, and that they weren't rich people, but she was rich because of this.
Yeah.
Like, because even as the child of swingers, like I got swatted on the butt if I got caught, diddling myself or humping or something when I was a little kid.
Mhm.
My brothers, on the other hand, got privacy and don't interrupt. Don't go in your brother's room. He's
Yeah.
busy,
Total.
So it's very interesting. So sorry to cut you off.
No, this
Continue.
is what we're here to talk about. I mean, this is what our listeners need to know. People need to know, like,
Mm-hmm.
this double standard, right? This and uh
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's just a super narrow construct of what it means to be feminine and what it means to be masculine, and it doesn't actually serve any of us, right? So
No.
so men were raising their hands. Men were saying, I need help. I'm not feeling as much as I want to feel, or, my cock won't stay hard, or I don't have control over when I ejaculate, or I don't know how to please my partner, or my partner is shaming me because my cock isn't staying hard, right? Like there's all this bullshit that was happening for men. So men were the ones initially in my practice who
Mm-hmm.
were raising their hands and saying, I need some help. So
Okay.
I followed where the need was and I started working with men. Um,
Yeah.
and mostly what men needed was permission to expand what they allowed themselves to feel and to be taught how
Mostly
to
what they needed.
expand what they allow themselves to feel, right?
Okay.
In other words, men are often
Mm.
told, don't be emotional, or that's for sissies, or you need to do this or don't do that or do these other things, or you're not a good lover if you do this, that, or the other thing, or fuck her, we don't care about her pleasure, it's all about your pleasure, right? All these kind of mixed messages, and it's confusing. Then you
Mm-hmm.
throw consent in on top of that, right? Which none of us have been taught anything about. And it's just hard. I feel for men. It's hard to be a man in today's world. It's hard to be a woman too. It's hard for all of us. It's hard for all genders, all bodies.
Right.
Not a binary. That's the other thing. Like we think there's this binary. Like what the hell? There's no binary. It's a rainbow. It's a
Mm-hmm.
spectrum.
Yeah.
We all have masculine and feminine. There are times when I feel an energetic cock and I want to play with that. So the whole gender thing is, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think we're fortunate, Jenny, that we live
Yeah,
in a
it's so
time.
new. It's
Yeah,
so new in human development too. It's like from what the Victorian / Gilded Age is when it came into play, when they decided that there had to be adolescence,
yeah,
instead of you're a youth until you're an adult.
yeah.
And then there was like this demarcation and like this creation of gender, when before it was kind of like, yeah, whatever. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a social construct, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I have worked with a lot of men, and more recently, I would say in the past maybe 3 years or so, there's been an explosion of
Mm-hmm.
women coming to understand that female sexuality is important too. So now my practice is about what
Okay.
I wanted it in the first place. It's about 50-50. So
Okay.
I work with both men and women. I work with all genders. I work with people who don't know what gender they are and don't care, you know. Mostly what I do
Mm-hmm.
is I help people feel more pleasure in the body. And how I do
Mm.
that is I use this phrase, better sexy time. Better sexy time is an acrostic. And it just helps people remember what their tools are. So the first M stands for mindfulness. How do I focus on what I'm actually feeling instead of like, holy shit, what if this person looks up and sees my double chin while they're going down on me, right? Instead of spectating, instead of thinking like, oh my God,
Get
I
out of my
forgot.
brain. All right.
Yeah.
Knock it off.
Yeah. Right. I mean, we all do this. Yeah. We
Right.
all do this. I'm somebody's trying to give me this beautiful gift of sexual connection, and I'm just not
Mm-hmm.
present. I'm out here, right? So mindfulness is the first tool. Better sexy time. The
Okay.
second one is movement. So just inviting more movement into the body, and we get used to
Okay.
masturbating in a particular way. We get used to pleasuring ourselves and each other. It becomes habit.
Because we figure out what works, right? And then we're like,
Sometimes,
well, that's what works. And then sometimes we just get like stuck to it, right? Like that's the
yeah,
only way that this is going to work. This is
yeah,
the only position that I'm able to come in.
totally.
No.
Totally. And
Mm-hmm.
most of us
So
learn to
that's
masturbate
great.
when we're
Movement in the
little.
body. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we learn to masturbate when we're little, when we're young. So we're trying to be quiet. We're typically
Mm-hmm.
hiding from our parents or our siblings. It's dark. We're making ourselves
Right.
small. Right. So this is, it's about
Yeah. And
expanding what
trying
we
to
allow
be
ourselves.
fast. Trying to be
Yes.
so fast, you know?
Yeah. Get it over with. Yeah. Yeah. So mindfulness
Mm-hmm.
movement can be opening and closing the eyes. It could be wiggling your fingers and toes. It could be rocking and rolling your pelvis. It can
Mm-hmm.
also be very important squeezing and releasing the PC muscle. Probably the most important muscle when it comes to sexual
Mm.
health, right? Having a strong PC muscle to
Explain what
pump
that
blood
is,
through the gland. Yeah.
right? What is the PC muscle?
The pubococcygeal muscle. It's the
There we go.
muscle that holds, it's the like the hammock floor of your pelvic bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Holds kind of your intestines and all those organs in place. It's the muscle you would squeeze if you
Mm-hmm.
were peeing and you wanted to stop in the middle of peeing. You would squeeze that muscle to try to
Right.
stop going to the bathroom, right? So that's the muscle squeeze, release,
Mm-hmm.
squeeze, release, squeeze, release. It's how you do Kegels. That's the muscle I'm talking about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So mindfulness movement, squeezing and releasing that muscle is
Just wanted
important.
to make
Better.
sure we had it,
Yeah.
yeah, for everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. And you could do that now. Like nobody even has to know. Like try that. Can you squeeze and release? Squeeze and release. Squeeze and release.
Mm-hmm.
And then not to get
Oh,
waylaid
listen.
on this.
Please listen to her.
So the number for optimal sexual health that I've heard, this comes from Joseph Kramer, who is the founder of the entire field of sexological bodywork. He says 500 Kegels daily for optimal sexual health. That means,
Wow.
yeah,
I am behind.
I know, me too. Me too. I usually tell my clients to start with 10 a day and then we go up to 50 and then we go up from there. It's not an easy thing to
Right.
remember all the other things we have to remember in life, right? Oh, um,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're struggling, if you want to experience more pleasure in your body, if you have kind of sneezy orgasms, which is what I used to have, I never had like the big Meg Ryan, I'll have what she's having in When Harry Met Sally movie kind of, now I'm dating myself, but those were the orgasms I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I had.
You are not.
Yeah, yeah, I'm out. Um, so yeah, Kegels is really important. So
Right.
mindfulness, movement, breath, B is for breath. Breath can be used to increase sexual arousal, increase what we allow ourselves to feel, and also to slow things down to a more relaxed sort of savoring.
Okay.
So breath is kind of a secret key. Better sexy time, mindfulness, movement, breath. S is for sound. You said something earlier that was really important, Jenny. You said, I learned to masturbate quickly. And I think we were talking about being silent. the vagus
Mm-hmm.
nerve, which is the primary transmitter of feel-good chemicals in the body, like oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, that all goes through the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve connects from the
Mm-hmm.
back of the brainstem through the back of the throat in female bodies to the uterus, and in male bodies down into the pelvis. And so when we allow
Mm-hmm.
ourselves to make sound, particularly like that guttural sound in the back of the throat that vibrates the vagus nerve, that will
Mm-hmm.
improve our sex because it allows those feel-good chemicals to travel more freely. So sound is actually quite important.
Nice.
Yeah, and then T is for touch and talk. Whew, I've been talking a lot.
That's why you're here. Don't feel bad about that.
So touch is what I help people, that's better sexy time. Those are the tools that I use to help people feel more pleasure in their bodies. First, radically self-loving on themselves through masturbation, and then they get to
Mm-hmm.
choose whether they, want to take that into partnership or not. Some people do and some people don't.
Okay. So you like to start with the masturbation because it is starting with an individual, and then they can decide, is this something that I want to share? I like that. There is
Yes,
a lot of consent and empowerment in that.
absolutely. And even
Whew.
before saying I start with masturbation, what I actually start with is, what does yes and no feel like in your body? Just the basic,
Mm.
just the notes of the
Mhm.
song, just the ABCs of the language. It's not just la 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 on the clitoris or on the cock. It's what do I actually want? What do I feel? What is a yes and what is a
Right?
no? And if I can't say until I have a no, I really don't have a yes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to throw it out there again and have to give her a shout out again because I wouldn't
Yeah.
know 90% of the people I know in this field yet, if it weren't for the fact that Michelle Renee uh,
Yeah.
e- embraced me and let me into this field. But she is
Oh,
the person who taught me, there is no true yes, no authentic yes without a safe no.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's where
And, that definitely got me into wanting to learn more about the wheel of consent and all of that. So,
yeah.
is that something that comes up when you're working with people?
Oh, all the time. Yes. Yes. Because most of us we water down our desires. We don't say what we want. Sometimes we don't even know what we want. That was my story. My beautiful partner would say, "What do you want? What can I do? How can I please you?" What And I would say, "I don't know, you do me. You do it." I
Mhm.
had no idea. I didn't know what I wanted. I hadn't given myself
Mhm.
permission. I had fled my body. I wasn't there. So it has to start with, what does yes and no feel like in your body? And then what do you
Mm.
want? You know? And I use masturbation very widely, Jenny. When I use that word, I mean self-pleasure. And that could mean, feeling the sunlight streaming in the window on my face and just going, this feels delightful, right? Doesn't always
Mm.
have to be sexual
Mhm.
manipulation of the genitals. For me, I have a wider definition, granted, than most. But the reason I do that is because, again, I think we all are stuck in the binary. I'm masturbating or I'm not masturbating because my hands are on my genitals
Mhm.
or I'm not. And I believe in the principles
Right.
of pleasure. Pleasure, and I want a pleasure to flood the
Mhm.
body so that I can raise my pleasure ceiling and expand what I allow myself to experience and feel and play with. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally feel that, and I agree with you on the definition or allowing for masturbation to mean self-pleasure, to mean, more than just manipulating the genitals.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, I feel like you can find pleasure in so many ways and in different mediums that it is mean to limit it to only that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And it's free. Like, you said before, Betty
mhm,
Dodson, she didn't grow up in a rich family. Like, this is I mean,
mhm,
I have in my bio something about something about, what does it say exactly? It's our
I can
connection.
look it up
It's
right now.
do you see it there? It's something about radical transformation for communities, healing the world.
Yeah. Our life's purpose is to empower people to live fully and joyfully in our own bodies, to see and believe in our own beauty,
Yeah.
because knowing yourself and your own body makes you happy and whole. It
Yes.
also makes for better community and a
That's
healthier planet.
the piece.
Fucking hell yes. Oh my
Yes. Yes.
God.
So sometimes people ask
Call
me,
it at.
"What are you talking about, Aim? Like, what does this even mean?" To me, it means when we are happy, healthy, and whole, we are like, I think of this as like we're like Olympic torches. We don't recognize that we are, but we are. When we are lit up, we help other
Mm-hmm.
people light up. Like they see our radiance
Mm-hmm.
and they want some of that. And
Right.
when more of us are lit up, when we're happy, we're healthy, and we're whole,
Mm-hmm.
we're less likely to inflict harm. We're less likely to stand for violence. We're
Mm-hmm.
less we're more likely to pass on like that kind of happiness or joyful torch, Olympic torch. And that
Mm-hmm.
really does change the world. One person, one body, one orgasm at a time.
Amazing. It's such a good cause. It's such a worthy cause of our time
Yeah.
and attention.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's free.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's free. It's a free way to
It's free,
feel
but
better.
it is not easy. I mean, we're
No.
like warriors against this tide of negativity and hatred.
Mm-hmm.
People trying to control us, right? People trying to shame us,
Mm-hmm.
people trying to guilt us. We're not born with those voices. Those aren't our voices. We're straight up pleasure seekers when we're born. Not until
Right.
somebody says like,
Yeah.
"Don't touch
Like,
that."
mm-hmm. Until the smack on the behind, like, don't do that.
Yeah.
How would I have known? Yeah,
Yeah.
no. All I thought was, oh, this is the way that I get that feeling. And it's cool. Here we go.
Yeah.
Um, so when you're working with men in particular,
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you, what are some of the challenges that you can help them overcome
Mhm.
when you're working with them, particularly in the field of masturbation? Like we had talked about perhaps exploring a different way. Um, have you had this experience, I guess, is first I should
Oh, yeah.
ask, like
Oh, yes.
someone coming to you for this. And then I would love to know, like, if
Hundreds
they're
of times.
having the problem of, because it is Masturbation Month. And honestly, I wonder if being able to apply the lessons that you give them when they're alone can help when they have partnered sex. So,
Absolutely.
if there's someone who is struggling with either delayed or premature, which, is very subjective.
Yeah.
Um, but generally, that you can tell if someone
Mhm.
is struggling with that or if that's what they have come to you for.
Yeah.
I know that there's psychological things to it, but I would love to hear how you try to target those things if you feel like opening up about it.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Most people who identify as male, when they come to see me, they're looking for one of three things. One is
Okay.
more ejaculatory control. That's that's how I frame
I
it. I
like the
don't
way that you
frame
put
it as
that.
a syndrome
Yeah.
or as a disease or as something negative. It's simply straight up
I love that.
more ejaculatory control. And reframing is
Okay.
certainly a part of it. Um, the other thing that people come to me seeking is less performance anxiety. Less
Okay.
performance anxiety. And the third thing is more connection to themselves and their partner. They just feel like there's something is missing, something is lacking. So it's typically one of those three things. And I would say, if I had to say a fourth thing, but really all three of those things fall under the same umbrella, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
am I normal and is there more? you know?
Okay.
And the answer is yes and yes.
All
so
right.
so the first thing that I help people do is like really notice, what do they feel in their body? Can they feel their feet on the floor?
Mm-hmm.
Can they feel breath in the body? How does breath move the body? What do they actually
Mm-hmm.
notice? And I help them develop what's called a somatic vocabulary. So, what does yes and no
Okay.
feel like in the body? And what do I notice? I ask a lot, what do you notice? What do you notice? What do you notice? Um,
Mm-hmm. Sounds familiar.
yeah, yes, exactly. So that's kind of the first thing. Um, there's
Mm-hmm.
always some education because many people don't know that orgasm is actually different than ejaculation. And orgasm
Mm-hmm.
comes first in male bodies. They're not the same. And so all bodies are multi orgasmic. And people get very excited when I say this because they just don't know. And there are some specific things that I teach, tips and tricks for ejaculatory control.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to run through some of them. But most of them fall
Sure.
into that better sexy time category. So I help people refocus on what do I actually feel if they're watching porn or if they're using fantasy. And both, a big fan actually of both of those things. I want to use all the tools, all the toys, all the tricks. Yeah, like bring it on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And remember to come back to like, what am I actually feeling in this body? What am I feeling in my cock? What am I feeling in my vulva? What am I feeling in my legs? What am I feeling in the back of
Mm-hmm.
my throat? And then what would make this feel even better in this moment? And now in this moment. And now in this
Mm-hmm.
moment, right? So we're learning to, I teach people how to sort of follow the tendrils of pleasure in their own body.
Mm-hmm.
Mindfulness, movement, breath, sound, touch, and talk. And always coming back to what am I feeling? What would make this feel even better? And then how much pleasure can I allow myself to feel? Sometimes we forget that we're
Mm-hmm.
actually, we're sort of clamped down. We're not supposed to. We're not supposed to feel this much pleasure. We're not supposed to feel more. You know,
Mm-hmm.
my mother says I shouldn't. My father says I shouldn't. My priest says I shouldn't. My principal says I shouldn't. My best friend said, like all the shit, all the
Mm-hmm.
fools. And I just help
Right.
people tune into like
Women
what,
my age, we
yeah,
don't do
exactly.
that. Da da
Exactly.
da. Mm-hmm.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
All of that. So that's what I do. That's what I do. I just help people
Mm-hmm.
tune into their own bodies. And anatomy lessons are important because sometimes people don't realize, you know what? If I pull the scrotal sac away from my body, it helps me gain more ejaculatory control. It is harder for me to ejaculate in a male body if I'm pulling the balls away from the body. Because one of the things that happens
Really?
with orgasm is the balls get pulled up in order to facilitate that. So there's little
Huh.
anatomy things like that. In female bodies, often women don't realize the upper left quadrant of the clitoris is the most sensitive part of the clitoris. So pay attention to where that, how does that feel on your body, right? That upper left quadrant. And also
Okay.
just giving ourselves permission to explore. Like you said earlier, it's supposed to be fun, it's play, Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about your childhood, and not everybody had as beautiful a childhood as I did. I'm one of the lucky ones. But in my childhood, I ran through sprinklers and laughed. I built forts
Mm-hmm.
with my brother. And, we don't
Mm-hmm.
do that as adults. We don't really play. And that's what sexuality is between consenting adults. It's running through
Right.
sprinklers. It's blowing bubbles. It's all of that. So,
Right.
yeah. Yeah. So I'm changing my look.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Okay, good.
Ah, so
This is part of life. I just
let's
want to
see.
say, I want to say this is part of what
Right.
happens, Jenny. Like my 83-year-old father
Mm-hmm.
just walked in, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes life happens, while we're doing stuff. Your daughter had a nosebleed right before we
Yep.
got on the call.
It
So,
is true. And you were so gracious and we're like, go ahead, handle that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
well, I mean, yeah, let's just
But that's
remind people
wonderful.
we bring our humanity. We bring our humanity to our
Mm-hmm.
sexuality, right? So whether I'm having sex with
Yeah.
myself or somebody else, if there's something that's causing me to not be able to focus my attention on what's going on, that mindfulness piece,
Mm-hmm.
I need to take care of myself, right? I might need to get up and go pee in the middle of having sex. I might need to
Mm-hmm.
like adjust the covers. I might need to turn the heat up. I might need to
Right.
say to my partner, you know what? I really need you to go take a shower. Come back to me.
Mm-hmm.
Go take a shower, come back to me. You're going to smell sweet and clean, and then I'm going to really be able to focus. So,
Yeah.
really, not being afraid to get fussy. We get to like it how we like it.
Mm-hmm. And that can change. And that's part of the fun. Is like
And
trying
that's the
different
other
things.
thing. I'm so glad you said that. Giving ourselves permission to change our minds as many times as our mind changes. Like I used to sit there
Mm-hmm.
and endure. I would want oral sex and then I'd be
Oh,
receiving oral
yeah.
sex and all of a sudden like in a New York second it would be like I actually don't want this anymore. But I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
say. So I would just
Mm-hmm.
endure. I would just tolerate. And here this person is trying to give me this beautiful gift and I'm not able to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
So now, yeah, giving ourselves permission. We get to change our minds as many times as our mind changes.
Right.
That's the path. That's the path to more embodied, better sex, more pleasure. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, my Aunt Baba used to say, it's a woman's prerogative to change her mind anytime she wants. And I couldn't hear that for
Yeah.
probably the better part of 2 decades.
Yeah.
And then it hit. Like when my marriage fell apart and then I got into this and, went through all the changes and went through the goo phase and the chrysalis and then came out the other end.
Totally.
But the goo phase in there is when I could finally hear that. When the transformation was happening is when I could hear that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. What was your aunt's name, Jenny?
Oh, it was Barbara, spelled like Streisand, no A
Aunt
in the
Barbara.
middle. But we
Aunt
called her
Barbara.
Baba, Aunt Baba.
Oh, Aunt
Yeah.
Baba. All right. Well, I'm just going to call this
Yeah, Aunt Baba.
Aunt Baba's mantra, right? And it's true
Right?
for all
Yeah.
people. Yeah, it's true for all
Mhm.
people. We're because we're human, we're socialized to get along, and we often think that we need to be small and just go along, but that begets fine. And when we're having sex with
Mhm.
ourselves or somebody else, we don't want fine. We want like fan fucking tastic, not fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I had this discussion recently with someone who was talking about happy. Like, I want to be happy. I can't remember exactly what happened. And I was like, I don't know if I believe in happy. I don't know if I believe that it's something that you should strive for because I feel like people who are happy, or I don't know, like in my mind, happy equals like kind of like having to put on a facade. I was like, I want to
Ooh,
be
yeah,
incredibly satisfied. I want to be fucking satisfied. I want to
yeah,
be like, oh, I just had like the Snickers of sex.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want.
That's
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, I mean, it gives us an opportunity to talk about grief for a moment because
Mm-hmm.
we feel all the feels. Sometimes grief comes
Mm-hmm.
up while we're having sex, sometimes sadness, sometimes happiness,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes joy, but we don't really allow ourselves to feel the full amount of pleasure, the full amount of satisfaction, the full amount of happiness, if you want,
Mm-hmm.
whatever those words are that resonate for you, unless we also allow ourselves to feel the flip side, the things that we sometimes think of as less positive. But it's all part of the
Mm-hmm.
range of human emotion. It's all part of being able to feel fully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. I am whew, I am feeling like I need to have you back on like 5
Oh,
more times so that we can maybe touch on some of the other things
yeah.
that I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah. There's lots to tease out.
I
Thanks, Jenny.
I do want to ask you really quick as we're wrapping up. What is going on now? What is new for you? Are you accepting clients? How is best for people to connect with you? And
Yeah.
anything
Thank
you
you.
you know you share, I can totally put in the show notes.
Totally. Thank you. Yes.
Hmm.
Well, I'm a big fan of just embracing the ecstasy of spring, and it is spring right now. But every season, of
Hmm.
course, has its own sense of, vitality and healthy and health and wellness in general. But spring is awfully juicy. So what I have coming up right now is Bodysex for vulva owners and women who identify, people who identify as women. There's one in May,
Mm-hmm.
there's one in August, and there's one in October. And then I teach the Betty
Okay.
Martins, the other Betty. That's Betty Dodson. I also teach Betty Martin's Wheel of
Right.
Consent. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that I think of that is the Wheel of Consent can really help us sort of revolutionize our relationships and embrace just more
Mm-hmm.
joyful, authentic connection. Um, and I have Wheel of Consent
Absolutely.
workshops in person in June and October. So those are my events that
Okay.
are coming up. Um, and then I always do one-on-one coaching. And I do one-on-one coaching both in
Okay.
person. I live outside Portland, Oregon. And I work with clients via Zoom all over the country and really the world. I have clients in India and England and um, all over. And it's not actually that difficult to book with me because I use an online scheduling tool, and it
Okay.
will adjust for people's time zones. So I see people for 60 minutes or 90 minutes, anywhere from
Mm-hmm.
one time to a dozen times. Most people see me 4 to 10 times. That's kind of the average.
All
But
right.
my goal is to help them, help clients, my clients, your clients, listeners, just pick up some more
Mm-hmm.
tools and toys to expand what they allow themselves to feel. So
Okay. And that's all they could find all of this at your website?
all of
Um,
this on my website,
Joyful Sex Love. Wait, wait.
joyful self
Joyful
love,
Self Love.com. Ugh.
joyfulselflove.com,
Yep.
www.joyfulselflove.com. I know it's a mouthful, but
All
really
right.
for me, I needed to start with the self
Oh
love.
no, it was just me stumbling over my words.
Oh yeah, it's all good. It's all
I
good.
must have
Yeah.
sex on the brain.
Yeah, well, that's good. It is Masturbation Month, after all.
There
Not
you
that we
go.
need any excuse.
I really don't. I really don't.
I'm so
I
glad.
told someone that I was interviewing you, and because I wanted to get this in specifically since it was Masturbation Month, and they were like, "Isn't that all 12 months?" I said, "Ah, yeah."
Oh, yay for whoever said that. Yes. Yes.
Right?
But we all have
All
our own
right.
cadence. No pressure on somebody who's not feeling it. And like it is
Mhm.
part of a healthy whole life. We're sexual our
Right?
whole lives. Well, my I just mentioned my 83-year-old dad. I mean, we're sexual till we're into our twilight
Mhm.
years, for sure. We can be if we
Oh,
want
yeah.
to. If we want to. It's up to whatever we
Right.
desire. We get to craft the lives we want, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
Amy, I
thank
want to thank
you.
you so much for coming on the pod. I hope you all will check her out because she does all of these amazing things. I want to thank everybody for coming and listening to this episode of Story Time with the Intimacy Ally, where we say, fuck no to the
Fuck,
status quo. That's
fuck
right.
no to the status
All
quo.
right.
Yeah,
Goodbye,
that was
my
just fun.
lovelies. Yay.
Thank you for tuning in to Storytime with the Intimacy Ally. We hope you learned a bit more about putting the fire back in your romantic relationships, exploring communication and emotional readiness in all relationships, and how to expand your definition of intimacy so you can reach your relationship goals. Go to theintimacyally.com to subscribe and never miss an episode. Follow the links in the show notes to social media and events. Till next time, keep on learning, growing, and thinking. Storytime with the Intimacy Ally podcast is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as health or mental health advice.